Thank you all for being with us this morning. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of Saturday sharing. It's going to be a really, hopefully, a great sharing type of session instead of having a set speaker or set topic type of thing. Uh, One of the things that grew out of one of our board meetings is that we've been all noticing that since the pandemic, we have been having fewer and fewer resources. Our choirs are not up to the same size as they were. Our congregations aren't even up to the same size as they were before. And that, especially for some of the music that we have in our libraries and what we've been used to doing, it creates a challenge because we don't have the same number of resources to be able to pull off some of these larger numbers that we used to be able to do before. So the intent of this meeting is to try to do, okay, so how do we get around some of these obstacles? And it's again to be a sharing, because one of the things that the pandemic taught us is that we have to be very resourceful. If anybody, I just saw a couple of Facebook's posts earlier this week that it was 4 years ago today that everything shut down.
Mm.
And in the space of 1 week, I remember I came up with, all right, I bought 2 video cameras. I bought software online that I could be able to do some editing and pull togethers. And we started just putting things together. And it was a great period of creativity out of necessity. And so while many of us are back, yeah, we're all back at this point, and we have some things that are going, but we still have to rely on some creativity in order to get things done and keep things rolling. For example, one of the things in my choir, I have about a choir of about 20 people, and it's actually a pretty balanced mix between tenors, basses, tenors, altos, and sopranos. Um, so I'm very fortunate in that space. But every once in a while, with only 20 people, if you get one or two key singers that aren't going to be available on a particular Sunday, you're up the creek and you need to come up with something. Um, so what I tend to do to help with my own things, and this is part of my own sharing, uh, I try and take an advance notice. If people know that they are not going to be here on a particular Sunday, that may influence what anthem I choose. And I've used the service called St. James Music Press. That's sjmp.com. And that's something I will put in the chat so that you can see what that is when I get a chance and someone else might be able to talk. That has some great resources for choirs that are just at that critical level. If you lose people on a particular Sunday and you still need to do something, it's an online subscription. I think it costs like I think it's $190 a year. But out of that, you can download any number of anthems, as many as you want, in any different voice ratings. They have them set up against the lectionary. They have them set up against different topics, and you can just have fun and go browse it. You don't have to actually subscribe to it if you want to just browse it. You can go to sjmp.com and you can just look at that catalog to see what they have. They have some very involved anthems, which requires almost a double choir or SSA-TTB type of thing. But they also have 2 parts. And what I normally do is I use one part would be for the male voices and one would be for the tenors and basses, and or tenors and basses and sopranos and altos. So if you put those two together, you can still get a nice sounding anthem when you're only having to work on 2 parts. And many of these anthems are done in a way that if it's late, I don't know when your rehearsals are, but if you have a midweek rehearsal, for example, and then something happens, and then on Sunday morning, you realize you need to punt, you need to get a different type of thing going. These anthems are built so that you can learn them in about 10 minutes. They use existing melodies of hymns that people may be familiar with, and then they just add an accompaniment that you can and play along. Um, there's one that uses, for example, the Bach first prelude from the Well-Tempered Clavier as the accompaniment, and it has a different hymn going background, and it's in canon. So the only thing you have to do is you learn the melody of the hymn once, and then sopranos and altos sing it the first time, tenors and basses sing it the second time, and then they sing it in canon, like a round, and you end up playing the accompaniment behind it, and it works perfectly. So it's an example of where if you have to make a quick decision or something like that, it's easy enough to put something together like that on a Sunday morning. One of the other things that I have done is I will just use a regular, same type of thing. Well, I'll use a hymn out of the hymn book that we have. And I'll play an accompaniment behind it. I won't necessarily play the same accompaniment that I would for the hymn itself. I would try and add a little bit more passing or like a more of a contemporary type of background, and have one part sing one verse, one part sing a second verse. Maybe we sing one stanza in harmony, and then we all sing it in unison at the end. And it's a way of putting together an anthem that sounds really full when you have only marginal number of singers in there. So those are some of the little tricks that I have done. And again, this is more of a sharing session. So possibly somebody might have another idea of something that they might have done. So if you have something that you'd like to offer, here's a chance for you to do that. I have some other ideas, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So let's have someone else give an idea of some of the things that they have been doing with fewer resources, then maybe somebody else might be able to catch on with that. Yes, Melody. Melody, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm with the Blue Point Congregational Church in Scarborough, Maine. We have a small church, about 50 members. We had a choir director, actually organist slash pianist slash choir director. He was very astute at all of the musical parts of the church program, and we lost him as of July. That he was here with us 5 years. So we are currently looking for a new person. Luckily, we had someone in the church who also plays organ. So he was able and willing to fill in for the hymns part of the church services, and he is getting paid a piece for that. I have become the choir director in the absence of one.
Congratulations.
Yeah, maybe not. And I did have our lead singer actually resigned shortly after he left. So I am working with a group of about 12, and we have a couple of good, strong men. Right now we're working on a piece. We did a piece for Palm Sunday, which is all set. That's a canon, and it's all in harmony with each other. I mean, everybody sings the melody and then breaks into canon. And then we are working on a piece for Easter, and I found that I had to, it's a piece called Jesus is Written, and I can't remember the name of the individual, but I've had to create around that, in that I've had to take some of the harmonies out and let people sing just in tune with each other until the end. When the end comes, that's when it has to go into parts to really build up at the end. So I think we've done rather well with that. The choir is a great group of people, and they're not used to me in that role. Let's put it that way. So I have to be careful as to how much I direct and how much I keep the team in enjoying the process. So I found that to be an interesting piece, because there are times that I want to say, okay, you got to hit the beat, the rest comes up, boom, you got to hit that consonant. And I have to be careful how I do that. So I do that. As far as going forward, I'm not sure what the situation is going to be. I covered Christmas, I covered Easter, and there are some old songs that we can do, so I'll pull a couple of those out. But I feel bad because it's a church that really had an amazing music program prior to me. So we're working as we can.
That's excellent. Yeah.
So if anybody hears of anyone who wants a job Yes.
Yes, Ruth.
Melody, I'm the job placement person for UCCMA. So
okay.
if you would like to post the job on the UCCMA website, please look on the UCCMA website for me, Ruth Striegel, and send me an email with a job description, and we would be Ed actually is the one who puts it up on the website.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
I'll be sending one also. Doesn't speak well for the state of Maine, I guess.
Hi, Fran.
Hi. The thing that I found particularly useful, I have an all-volunteer choir. They are the usual age range that you would expect from that. So we have an issue with absences for various health reasons and so on. I also have 2 couples in the choir. And the thing that I have found over the years is couples are extraordinarily narrow-minded about things like vacations. They both want to go together. I've never been able to figure that out. But at any rate, what I have found extraordinarily flexible and usable over the years, I collect rounds of all sorts. And I have a repertoire of about 50 or 60 that I keep in my back pocket. Everything from 2-part rounds to 4 or 5-part rounds. Taizé is particularly useful. A number of their canons are wonderful and so on. And most of them are fairly easily learned. And if I'm feeling creative, virtually almost all of the shape note tunes can be done in canon. So.
Excellent. Yes, Amanda.
Oh, I just wanted to let Fran and others know that my free use music website does have rounds and some simple stuff on it, and it is all free use. So I'll, in case anyone doesn't know, I'll plug the URL into the chat. But there's literally a page on it that says rounds, and that is probably where the simplest stuff is. So feel free to look at it and see if anything is of interest. I'll just get that plugged in. That was all I wanted to say.
Yes, Joan.
I just posted some stuff in the chat too. We have our first 2 Saturday sessions a while ago were on Gussy Up Your Music. And there are 2 videos there. And I know one of them, first one was Peter Stickney, who has 9 members in his main congregation, and he had all kinds of ideas how to enhance music. So there may be some ideas in those 2 videos. So I put the link in the chat session. They're on YouTube.
Excellent. Yeah, one of the things that you can possibly do is, again, if you have an anthem or something that was very involved and you don't have the resources to do it, analyze the piece and find out what are the most important things that need to be heard at a specific time. And so it might be you just have sopranos and altos sing a section of it instead of having all the choirs sing it. So you can still use some of those resources, because again, if money is an issue and you don't want to go out and buy tons of additional anthems, you can use some of the other ones, just whittle it down a bit so it's not quite as involved. Have all the tenors sing the bass line with the bass if you only have 1 or 2 or something like that. So it becomes an SAB anthem as opposed to an SATB. So there's definitely some editing or analyzation that you can do. Yes, David, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your resources. I have an unusual problem. I'm in Seymour, Connecticut, Congregational Church there, and the state of Maine is not the only one with problems. I just wanted to, just reassure you that you're not alone in your struggles. I have a choir of about maybe 10 people, and I have the unusual issue of having an abundance of men and very few female singers. I have no altos. Unfortunately, I had an alto with a beautiful voice, and she died of cancer a little over a year ago. And her husband, who was a bass, stopped going to church for a year, so I lost him too. And she was a wonderful person, and so the loss was felt on multiple levels. But I have no altos. And if you've ever tried to find, if anyone can find an STB arrangement anywhere from JW Pepper or anybody like that, I will send you money. I will send you a check. I have not been able to find anything. And so I've resorted to doing a lot of arranging myself. And but one resource that I have found useful is the Chalice Praise book. I don't know if any of you use the Chalice Hymnal. There's a companion volume called The Praise, and it's basically has more contemporary praise and worship music. There's about 150 or so, or 180 songs in it, and they come from different traditions, gospel, folk, a lot of stuff from the Iona community, that sort of thing. And I've started using those because my choir, they do 2 anthems every service. They do an anthem, and then we sing during the offertory. And because of our limited resources and our limited time and everything, we only rehearse for like an hour and a half after church on Sundays. I've decided to make the second anthem something that's just kind of lightweight, something that we can learn quickly. And so I've turned to this praise book, and it's really worked out well. There are some beautiful melodies in it, and I think like James was saying earlier, if there's 3 verses, I'll have everyone sings verse 1, and then the men will sing verse 2, and then the ladies will sing verse 3, or half and half. I have done things like add harmonies, to give it some variety. I've added harmony parts for one verse. So anyway, those are some of the things that I've done. So thanks.
Thanks for sharing that. Great. Yes, Ruth.
I have a couple of things. There's a UCC equivalent to the Chalice Praise book, which is Sing Prayer and Praise. Does anybody know about that one?
Nope.
Yeah. So that's another resource that would be similar. And there are some very cool things in it. The index is lacking So it's hard for me anyway to search in there. And my understanding is that they thought they were going to build up an index after the fact, and it just never happened. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I also wanted to mention that one of the things that I've done in trying to get things going back after COVID was use hymns from hymn collections by hymn writers, which often in my experience will be either just a unison tune, or maybe there's unison tune and then there's a chorus that's in 4 parts. So you get some of the cool parts of an anthem without working really hard at a full anthem. And a lot of those collections are published by GIA or by Hope Publishing. I've had a lot of success with stuff by Mark Miller. Some of his stuff is published by Choristers Guild as full-blown anthems, and it's really cool. But you can find the same tune in his hymn collections, like Roll Down Justice, for example. So it's worth exploring. Adam Tice has some wonderful collections out. You can actually go on the GIA website and they have what they call Unbound, which means you can get separate hymn tunes rather than buy the whole collection, which can be very helpful. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. I also wanted to make sure, Jim, that the conversation had a little time to talk about things beyond choir.
Mhm.
For example, I've been trying to nurse along a little guitar group.
Oh, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, there's the good and the bad. The good is that I was able to involve some people who don't sing and don't want to sing and say you wouldn't like to hear my voice, but they play guitar. And that offers us a different kind of music in some instances that some of the younger folks in the congregation really appreciate. We've been able to do some stuff with guitar and voice and piano, and sometimes with just guitar. I will say that currently this group doesn't really exactly exist because the person that I kind of started it for has decided to take a vacation from the congregation. So, things keep evolving. But we've had some good success with it, and it has involved a couple of people who really appreciated a chance to be involved in a different way.
Excellent. I know one of the things that Peter had used in some of his Saturday sharing the Gutsy Up Your music was including, okay, he only has 9 people total in his congregation. So, okay, on this day, you're going to play the tambourine. You're going to be doing that, so people come to the church and say, okay, thanks for coming. Here's your part for today. And it takes them a little, it gets rid of some of that agita about it. It says, oh, okay, well, all right. And it makes a joyful noise. So that's a terrific, you might be able, a lot of us are doing preparations just before then, but if you have an opportunity before service, we involve kids a lot when we have some percussion to have that we need in the thing. So we have shakers and drums and things of that they can just come up and have a good time with as we're doing some of the music to get them involved in it as well. Yes, Melody.
Another thing that I've tried is to do pieces of Taizé. And because it's repetitive, we kind of bring in the congregation at the end so that they feel like they're part of that piece. And that seems to work nicely. The congregation seems to like that a lot.
Great. Ed.
I have a couple of things. One is that to help with who's going to be in my choir on a given rehearsal or on a given Sunday, This year I've been using a new app for your phone called Choir Mate. It took me a little while to convince some of my older choir people that maybe they could use an app on their phone, but it's proven to be very helpful, so that I can list every Sunday or every rehearsal date on the calendar part of it, and they can click off whether they're going to be here or not be here. And even if on a Sunday morning they're going to be sick and they just can't come, they can send a text message right on that app. It's a free app for the basic parts of what it can do. You can also pay money and have more features. I can also post what the music is we're planning on doing for each week, and can even put links to recordings like on the Pepper site so they can listen to a recording of a piece. So I found that has been more helpful than just sending me an email or filling out a calendar in choir rehearsal telling me when they're going to be there, because it seems to give them more. I don't know what the word is. they seem to be able to respond more frequently than they used to before. The other thing I'd like to talk about what's happened in my bell choir, because we have I think 4.5 octaves of Malmach bells, and we now have anywhere from 4 to 8 players. So we just can't use all the bells we have. And so during the pandemic, I actually split up my group, which used to have maybe 10 or 11 players, into 2 groups, an afternoon group of older people who did some very simple music for 4 people, 8 bell music. And I had an evening group with my better ringers, and we did music for 6 ringers in that group. And there's a lot of that music that it was published as thanks to the pandemic. It seems to be most effective. After a while, if you have just 8 bells, they're all in the same range, it gets a little monotonous. But a lot of that music now is available with the optional piano accompaniment. And that just makes the bells so much more effective, because you still have a full range of tonality, but with just a few number of ringers. And the other thing I've done now that we're back in person, and I think like this Sunday I'm going to have 7 ringers, and so I found a piece that I've been looking at all my 2, 3, 4 octave music that I had in the library, and trying to identify pieces that have predominant interest in the treble bells, and figuring out how we could do it with 6 or 7 or 4 or 5 ringers, and keep the essence of the piece, and then fill out the rest of it, just making up the piano part from the bass notes that aren't being played. And I found that actually works really well, so that I can still use some of the music in my library, even though I don't have the number of ringers that I need, simply by filling in on the piano. Not all anthems, not all bell pieces work that way, because the melodic things keep going down into bigger range. But when you have a hymn tune based piece, it often works well.
Yes, Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret Bradley, and I'm a member of the Kingston Congregational Church, UCC, in Kingston, Rhode Island, and I'm the co-chair of the music board, co-chair of the music board. I'm also a longtime choir member, and we have a relatively new minister of music. She's wonderful, but we have moved away from some of the more what people generally might classify as classical music, in part because we've had a smaller choir since the pandemic. Now we're kind of back to having kind of even numbers in SATB, very like we might have, say, 12 people on a Sunday, whereas we used to have in the 20s. A beloved choir director passed away during the pandemic, not of the pandemic, but of the disease, but he died, and that was a big loss. And my question to all you musicians and people doing church stuff out there is,
is there some way that you've found, and I know that there was one suggestion, of using, say, Palestrina, Mozart, Mendelssohn, some, real honored and beloved, still beloved musicians or composers. Is there some way of doing their music and still doing their music justice and not having as many singers as one might want to have? And I guess we are not balanced every single Sunday, so I think we should get that app, Ed. But does anybody have any suggestions about how we could actually incorporate some of the beloved, really, really fantastic music in the history of the church? Even new music, but just really music with depth.
Well, one of the things that I've done for something like this is, again, the St. James Music Press is a good opportunity to look for that, because many of their arrangements or many of the much of the music that they have include different voicings. So it would be, I know for example, they do have things by Mozart, by Bach, by some of these other ones, but they have it, instead of the full choral, they have it in SAT or SAB, or just two parts. And the accompaniment is still kind of the same. So from that perspective, the musician is still more or less carrying the weight, but it's just not as full as the other times when you had a full choir, for example. Another opportunity you might take a look at is just to see if you can simplify. Are there parts that you can leave out? Many times, for example, if you could have just enough for like a 2 parts, if you have somebody singing the melody, and it might be combination sopranos and altos, and you have tenors and basses singing one, or who else is left singing a different part that's written, it will still work, because it's the beauty of those pieces, is the genius is that it's still all together, because your mind fills in those spaces where those parts are not being sung.
Especially if the accompaniment is doubling the voice parts, right?
Exactly. So it's certainly, it would be definitely tougher to do something that is contrapuntal, or if there's a lot of back and forth between parts like that, that may be a difficult. But if you take, for example, Jesu joy of man's desiring, all right, you still have the accompaniment going all the way through, but you could whittle or narrow that down to just 2 vocal parts.
Right. Carrying that melody through. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I would add that 12 people is enough. I mean,
Yes.
I only have 8. We do 4-part music, because when I've tried to do 3-part, it just hasn't worked for us. So if you have somebody on each voice part who can carry the line, you can do it with 4 people.
Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it, though?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's going to be there on Sunday, right?
One of the things that I've done to kind of help with the parts, for example, and this is using some of the stuff that we've learned from being virtual and bringing it now into a world where we're all together, is I live stream my choir rehearsals. And we just run our normal live choir rehearsal. And unfortunately for the live stream, it becomes the Jim Boratko show for 90 minutes, because the camera is pretty much focused on me, just as the way I would hope that the people in the choir are focused on me during rehearsals. And I just run the regular choir rehearsal. And if people can't make it to that particular rehearsal, they can still go back and review that part of it before the Sunday service. And I've also taken, there are a lot of these if you search YouTube, for example, we're doing for Palm Sunday, my choir, we're doing "Oh for a Closer Walk with Thee" by Stanford. And I happened to find YouTube videos that has just the soprano part, and it has the music scrolling across the screen at the same time, and then it plays the soprano part and it's highlighted so people can go and just work on their particular part. So if you might want to check some of the anthems, there's a lot of them out there. The best ones naturally have someone singing the part, as opposed the one I just mentioned has some kind of piano playing the part, but it's louder than the other parts. So if you're listening for the soprano line, that will be prominent. But it's a way of making the harder part more accessible to people. They can go back and listen to it and review it on their own time and be a little bit more comfortable with it when we end up doing it on a Sunday. Yes, Jennifer.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I was going to be on camera, so I'm horribly backlit, but that's why I was off. I'm going back a little bit in the conversation. So I'm the minister of music at Clinton Presbyterian Church in Massachusetts, and it's a very small church, about 50% Cameroonian. So we do a lot of Cameroonian praise songs, but on a given day, the best I can do with a choir is 4 people. That includes me, my husband, who has a beautiful voice but can't hold his own part, and the minister. So it's a very, very small choir. So as much as I've tried, even over this past year, I've actually gotten a pushback, like they don't actually really want to do too much. We'll do some pickup stuff occasionally. We have nothing planned for Easter and all that. So we focused more towards empowering the congregation. So, of course, people always say, oh, you don't want to hear me sing. You know, well, fine. Send me what you like to hear. And we put it up. We're very hybrid. We're on Zoom every week still. So because it's a smaller congregation, that works. So we play a lot of YouTube videos that people have chosen. We've played one of the families, their siblings are back in Africa, and they have a praise group there. So I found the shortest video was like 7 minutes long that we we played, just so that they can kind of hear that. I have instruments constantly around that people can pick up. I have some kids' instruments there too, and I've brought in some guitars. And sometimes someone's just standing there, and I go, "Hey, you want to sing the hymn with me today? You can." So it's been kind of nice, but the whole like background and getting away from that choir is really challenging as a musician. And, you know, who knows, maybe someday it'll come back. The kids don't want to sing either. The last person that was there before me really kind of had a very traditional kids choir. And it's not that group of kids. So she wouldn't let them, you know, move or have fun. They had to stand kind of prim and proper. So they were sort of burnt out before I got there. But I know I was just kind of throwing it out there that we're like in a totally different situation. Like you were talking about choirs of 8-10 people. I'm like, wow, that would be awesome. But that's even for special things, I can't get them to show up. And when we do rehearse, we rehearse half an hour before the service. So we have just done some hymns and things like that. But I don't know. I guess I just wanted to say that it's okay if you need to get away from some of the more traditional things. It can happen. And yeah, that was my statement.
Have you done things? So there's Jennifer. You have to mute yourself.
Oh, am I echoey?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So just one of the things that you might also maybe you are doing this already is like call and response type of things. Yeah. So that as you start something and I'm sorry, it's not sacred. But this land is your land. You know, you're doing something like that, and then everybody can just fall in. Or Siahamba, we are marching in the light of God, or something like. When the Saints Go Marching In. I mean, that's This Little Light of Mine, things like that, where, yeah, you might start it, but then you can involve more or less everybody in there, and it becomes an impromptu choir as that type of opportunity.
Yeah, we've definitely tried a lot of those things. And actually, we did it online sometimes when we were all via Zoom. It was kind of interesting because we were playing with the time things and all that. It was fun.
That's wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes, Ed.
Yeah, I don't want to throw your whole plans on the playing YouTube over your live stream, but I just want to point out that that might not be very legal. The copyright and the licensing things change completely from a church service in person to once you're broadcasting it over the air into the cloud or wherever it's going. A whole different licensing things take effect.
Yeah, no, actually, that's I'm glad you said that. So we are a very closed, like it would be like this Zoom. So it would just be through there. And then when we do the recording, we only share the sermon, and like that's all that makes it into the actual world. But yeah, we don't even share any of the music that gets played. It's just the sermon, really. But yeah.
Excellent. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Joan.
I'm just curious if anybody's had flops or things to avoid. Oh, everybody's very successful, huh?
No, well, so it goes with that choir thing. So I had brought this great song that we were practicing, and no one was showing up for the practicing, and then everyone had to travel Christmas Eve, and we just pulled out a hymn. And that was what the 4 members of the choir, and we sang harmony. But yeah, and I still have that piece of music that I paid for, and I really still want to do it, but now I have to wait till it's liturgically ready again. It's Carry the Light, and I forget who does it, but yeah. So yeah, I think that's why I've gotten like that pushback from the choir saying, okay, guys, like we don't really have the energy now that things are open again. I actually had a very successful choir when it was when we were online. I'm recognizing some of the names came to the sort of webinar I did on recording. And we recorded a big, huge Christmas collection of music. I think some of you were part of that. So we were pretty, yeah. And now that there's too many things to do, people, they don't have time to come. Yeah.
I think most of us just don't want to admit our failures, Joan, to answer your question. We'd rather talk about the successes.
We try to forget the failures. Melody.
One of the things that I've fallen back on a little bit is doing the taze. You can do a couple of streams of the taze, and if you have someone in the congregation that plays an instrument, I play the violin. I have a person that plays the flute and a person that plays a clarinet, and they can go ahead and do the balance of the taze melodies along with the choir, and that way the choir only has to concentrate on the one piece that's repetitive, and that's very helpful too, I think.
Wonderful. Yes, Ruth.
This is totally off topic, but I'm very curious whether Amanda and I are the only people here who are not living in New England.
Looks like that may be the case.
I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey. There you go. Good.
Well, that's still a lot closer. I'm in New Mexico, and Amanda's in Colorado Springs.
I was in New Mexico a few months ago. I don't know if that,
No, that doesn't count.
makes you feel.
You're visiting.
I actually have a question for all of you. One of the frustrations I've had is, and I guess it could be called a failure, is just getting people involved in the music making process. I know somebody earlier mentioned that a lot of people say, oh, you don't want to hear my voice, you don't want to sing, and I get that. I hear that a lot too, but I know there are people out there that, a couple people that play guitar, there are people that do, all these sort of hidden talents, but nobody ever like comes for it. When you put out like a general call, I have found that just almost never works.
Right.
And I think, and I don't know if it's, germane to congregations in general, or if my congregation is like, it's just, they just want to sit there and kind of take it in and then go to coffee hour, there's just not, and nobody's in a big rush to like get involved. And and it's mostly older folks. We don't have a lot of younger, people, with lots of energy. So, that makes it harder. But I don't know if anyone has had any epiphanies around that in that area that you could share.
I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but I really do think a lot of people's bandwidth is very, very, very stretched right now. And this is only one of many kind of consequences or implications of that. Most of the people in my relatively small congregation are happy enough to sing the hymns, but trying to get song leaders, let alone a choir, even just song leaders, it is like pulling teeth. And, I know that people have a lot of stuff going on and a lot of preoccupations. And so, my thought is that we should just all be as gentle with ourselves as possible, and whatever we're doing, do the best we can and keep at it. Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Fran.
There are a couple of things that are, because I am sympathizing with Amanda, because my particular congregation, there are a whole number of accomplished people in there, but they never volunteer for anything. So what I essentially have is a group of people who sort of keep an eye out for me. And every time they hear somebody singing on Sunday or whatever, they'll point them out to me. And the only thing that seems to work in my place is the direct personal approach. And the other thing that I do is immediately when I find somebody who's interested, who sings or whatever, is that I get their email address and immediately put them on my mailing for choir emails. So I do a weekly email to the choir, and whoever are the prospective people also get that email. So that's the direct approach seems to be the only thing that really, really works with these guys.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I will walk up to them and hand them the music and say, here you go. You're going to, next week it is. Or and I do find that a lot of professional musicians, they just don't want to perform on Sunday. So one of the members of the congregation, he is banker by day and does musicals by night. And he's fairly young, and he doesn't want to sing in a choir. So I said, we were doing Noah's Ark, and the pastor was going to mention somewhere like a rainbow. So I brought the music with me. So I said, hey, you must know this song. You want to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow as the intro? And that's how much time I gave him. And he did it. And people were like, I didn't know he could sing. And I was like, well, he's a show guy. But yeah, I don't know. So maybe I'm a little too blunt. I do have the relationship with the people now. As I said, it's a small church, but I just ask them and give them the music.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I can't claim this as an inspiration, because a number of the choruses that I sing with from time to time around the New York City metro area have come to this conclusion. Is what they do is they say, okay, 2 weeks from next Sunday, we're singing X piece. We will rehearse every day of the week for the week preceding this, come to X number of rehearsals and sing with us at the concert. So what it is it's very back end loaded toward the concert, and we only have enough rehearsals that we figure we're going to need to be able to prepare that with the group that we usually get. So I've had some success with saying, okay, come to this fill in the blank 4 or 5 rehearsals and sing with us on Easter or Christmas Eve or whatever.
You know, I was really struck by the use of the word perform before, and I sometimes wonder if maybe for some people in my congregation and elsewhere, the whole idea that it is performing and not just part of worship, like I wonder if there's some possible reframing around that. Is there, I mean, reimagining that it isn't about sort of getting up and giving a Broadway show performance. And I'm a New Yorker by background, so I love Broadway shows, but you know, I think all of us who are church musicians recognize that there is something lost in the worship for us because we are working. For congregational members who haven't sort of made the commitment we've made to be church musicians, I just wonder if there's some way of framing this or talking to people about it that would reconnect it with worship and make it seem less performancy.
Oh, you
One
have
of the-
just hit on a very sore spot with me. And, you know, I need my 30 seconds here, which is I refuse to use the word performance in church. Ever, ever. This is worship. We are sharing worship with one another. We are not performing. The reason for that is that I'm right in the New York metro area. And what happens is the minute you let people get the idea of performing in their heads and they're in the congregation, they picture themselves sitting in row M in Carnegie Hall being an informal music critic. And that is one thing that, in my view, at least, we do not need in church. So within the bounds of church, performance is not in my vocabulary. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that similarly, for my church, I never use the word performing. I use we present. We present an anthem, we present an offertory or music such a in a worship setting. We know even if there is applause, it is not acknowledged because what I feel is the applause is an act of praise. So it's not an act of recognition for me or the choir or something of that. And we are congregational, so it's tough to get people to clap, but people do clap. But again, we don't acknowledge that. But I wanted to jump back to the other thing about getting people to come up and sing with the choir. One of the things that we do as a tradition in our church is on Easter Sunday and on Christmas Sunday, which is the Sunday before Christmas, we do Hallelujah Chorus by Handel as the benediction response. And we invite everyone up from the congregation who wants to come up and sing. So we will get close to 100 people coming up and singing in that. And it's a mad for all, you know, it's a free for all type of thing. Luckily, I have brass players that are helping me get through all of that too. So it's you know, it's a massive noise, but it's fun, and people actually look forward to that. Now, translating that to get them to come on a regular basis is a little bit tougher. It does take a direct approach, and it's usually not me, it's somebody else in the choir who goes up and says that to someone. So that's, you know, we're not growing by leaps and bounds either, but I've had more success with the direct approach as opposed to a general approach. All right, I'm conscious of the time, but we do have, is there anything else that people would like to share? Yes, Joan.
I just want to do a shout out to Fran Morton. She's been a long time member and was our president once upon a time. So here we have Meg, and we have Fran. This is like old times. This is great.
Thanks, Joan. It's always nice to see familiar faces on this.
Yeah.
Yep, fun to be here.
It's nice to meet you all.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you all encouragement because we're all there. We're all in the same place. We're struggling to do what we can with the people that we have. Hopefully, we've given you a couple of ideas that seem to work a little bit for us, and it may be able to work for you. And hopefully, we'll get there again some other time in the future. So thank you all for joining us, and I'm hoping you found this enjoyable. And I again want to call your attention to our session next month, which is going to be on hearing, and we will have an audiologist who will be able to talk about it. I know I have hearing aids, but that's from my rock days in front of an amplifier from years ago. It's not from church music necessarily, but it is something that I am very aware of, and I'm anxious to hear what you're going to say. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please check this video out and other videos that we have on our YouTube channel and our website, uccma.org.